If you've been trying to break into the game industry and you feel like you've been doing everything right, but it still hasn't happened for you, this video might be able to explain why. Most career advice in the game industry isn't wrong because it's malicious, it's just outdated. It's written for a different industry at a different time with different hiring pressures, different team sizes, different stories, different expectations all around. And if you're following it in 2026, it can really hurt your chances of being hired. In my last video, I talked about what works right now, but in this video, I'm going to talk about the popular advice that no longer works. And the number one reason why a lot of advice out there is not working right now is simply because the people who made it got in at a different time. It's not because they're lying, it's because they came in when the industry was different and they've not had to re-enter it. It's changed and they've not had to go through a hiring process in many, many years. Maybe they got in when hiring teams were growing, when juniors were being trained more effectively, when studios could have a bit more risk tolerance. Maybe studios didn't care about ramp-up time. All those kinds of things were happening in the past. They're no longer a thing. So we have to take that into account for the 2026 hiring period. I've talked a little bit about how I got into the industry. It was 2010, 2011, and I heard an advert on the radio for 100 untrained QA testers. No experience necessary. I like video games. I'll give it a shot. And bam, that's all it was. I did a little prep beforehand, but that's how easy it was back in those times. And that was 15 years ago now. It's changed a lot since then. And I'm lucky enough to be a hiring manager and have been a hiring manager for 10 years now. So I've seen how it's changed and how it's developed, and thankfully how I can help you as a result. So one advice that used to be given, and I've given it myself in the past, was just ship something, ship anything. It's impressive either way. And it still is impressive, correct. However, it was a different time back then. Shipping anything was impressive a few years ago. You're thinking 5-10 years ago, shipping anything was great because indie tooling was less accessible and teams were built off enthusiasm rather than professionalism. In 2026, that bar has moved quite considerably in some cases. The question is no longer can you ship something, because using Unreal and Unity these days, anybody can ship something. A lot of people can ship something in a week, 2 weeks, a small little game. It's fairly easy. So now that question becomes, can you ship something under constraints? The amount of game jam projects I'm seeing today that back when I started would have been like a mind-blowing indie game is crazy. The amount of rapid development in the industry is fantastic. But it also puts us on the back foot when we're trying to hire, because you know, what was a fantastic, amazing indie game 10, 15 years ago now is a game jam project, which is crazy. We also have to talk about tutorials and their role in portfolios. This isn't a video game genre specific thing because it affects many industries, but it does affect ours, so we need to be aware of it. I should say up front, tutorials aren't bad. They're great. However, tutorial-led portfolios are bad, because if you just follow a tutorial, you're demonstrating to me you can follow steps, you can reproduce things, and you can match visuals. Correct. However, you're not demonstrating that you can explain why choices were made. You can't adapt when things break. You can't scope realistically, and you can't debug it or figure out what's wrong without instruction. And that's something we at the studios will deliberately target in interviews. We'll pick out a piece of artwork or a piece of design work, whatever is in your portfolio, and drill you on it. Why did you do this? What if we change that? And kind of play and see how deep you really went. Another thing that is now outdated in the industry is that passion will kind of carry you into the industry. Very, very different from when I got in. Remember my story? I heard the advert on the radio and I was like, hey, I like video games. I'll give it a shot. And that was that. Absolutely cannot do that now. It's a professional industry which requires professional standards. And you need to remember that a lot has changed in the last 10 years, 15 years, because now schools have programs dedicated for video games and there's more information available on the internet for people who enjoy video games. So everybody trying to get into the games industry these days is passionate. That is not a separator anymore. That is the default. So rather than being passionate, you need to show how you can be professional. You need to show how you can be communicating clearly. You need to show how you can handle feedback. You need to show whether you can finish things. You need to show your understanding of production realities rather than just, I love video games, I'm going to work really hard because I love video games. Personally, I do see a lot of these in interviews, and while I love the chat because it is always fun to talk to people about video games, especially super passionate people, we're not there for that. We're there to see how you're going to be in a working environment. We have a game to ship. It's going to take, X amount of years. Can you fit into that and be able to be productive is what I'm looking at, not, hey, have you played, the latest game that just came out? Another thing I think is outdated now is saying apply for entry-level roles, because I think the term entry-level is, it's a bit misleading, because I think in the past it meant something different. Like to me, entry level was a junior role. It's basically you get training on the job and then you get, hopefully you get better and then you can get promoted, that kind of thing. Whereas now entry level means something a little bit different. There are no more roles where you can kind of jump into the job with no training at all and just kind of learn on the job and get trained and then get promoted. That doesn't really happen anymore. Entry level nowadays is more kind of, you're going to work on something kind of limited in scope, but you'll still get responsibility for that and there'll still be low or limited supervision. So you have to demonstrate that you're just going to be able to get on with the work and get it done, even if it's small in scope. That's simply because studios don't really have the time or the people to train anymore. We don't really have the luxury of sitting down with somebody and training them for 6 months so then they can be productive, because 6 months can be half your project time or a quarter of your project time. So it's a big trade-off. And I think that naming of the entry-level role is where a lot of people get stuck, because they're thinking of a role, like I said at the beginning, where it doesn't exist anymore. Now you've got to aim for this role, which is limited scope, but high responsibility. You still have to demonstrate you're responsible and going to be able to get the work done. And I just want to say, if any of this advice has tripped you up, or you feel like you've gone down the wrong rabbit hole and this video is starting to make you realize, oh, maybe I need something more specific, something more tailored to myself, I do offer consulting calls. I will put a link in the description below. We can review your portfolio or CV. We could talk about your targets, your discipline, your roles, the studios you want to target, and we can rebuild your approach if you have gone down some of these more old school methodologies. No pressure on that. It's just an option. I'm going to keep making these videos regardless, just an option in case you feel like you need that help. So we talked about some of the outdated advice, but what should we replace it with now? So I want you to think like a studio would think, or a producer like me would think. Instead, think about, how do I reduce risk? How do I show judgment? How do I demonstrate reliability? How do I make a hiring manager's life easier to hire me? In my previous video, I recommended shipping complete work with documentation, showing iteration and production thinking, because that's kind of modern advice that we're looking for in 2026 specifically. And if you haven't watched it yet, I strongly recommend you go watch my video on how to get a job in the game industry in 2026. I'll expand on those points that I just mentioned there greatly, and it will go over why the old advice fails and what to replace it with. These two videos were designed to work together, so hopefully you can view both. I'm going to put that on the screen somewhere and a link in the description as well. But overall, what I want you to take away from this video is that the games industry didn't become impossible. It just became stricter, and there are new rules to abide by. If you're willing to drop outdated narratives, stop copying what else everybody's doing, and start thinking like a studio, your odds will improve dramatically. Thank you so much everyone for watching. If you did like this video, please give it a like, drop a comment. If you have a question, please subscribe as well. Really helps out. I'm going to be posting regularly about careers, about production, about life inside the games industry. So if you love that, please feel free to follow along, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next one.